budget for Bharat travels to the city of Bengaluru, a city which has given us so many innovators, so many startups. I am spending time in a startup hub to get a pulse of the city and to find out what the startup founders want from the finance minister. So for budget for Bharat from Bengaluru in the true startup style, here's a startup adda that we have created with 3 startup founders and 1 VC founder. Let me introduce them for the budget discussion and what's expected from the finance minister in this union budget. Let me introduce from Zetwork, Amrit Acharya is joining us, Siddharth Pai from 314 Capital, the venture capitalist, and the nerve center behind the startup world really. We have with us Sudarshan Kamath from Smallest AI. There should be a story behind calling it the smallest AI, Sudarshan. And Harish Chandrasekhar, who's from the deep tech world and from Semiconductor. So quite an interesting panel here to talk about the artificial intelligence, deep tech, and the kind of technological boost that we are seeing in the manufacturing space and how is the VC community really backing it up. So Siddharth, first starting from your vantage point, you're also into advocacy and also talking to the government about what the startup world really needs. What are the top 5 aspects that is required for the startup culture to become even bigger from where we are currently?
No, I think, so that's a fantastic question, Nisha. I think we've had 6 years of unprecedented years over there for that matter. So I think the one thing that the ecosystem is looking for as of now is actually stability as well as deregulation. Right. I think the first and foremost what needs to end up actually happening as of now is a number of our legacy acts and legacy regulations have to end up going away. We still have an ESOP culture that actually punishes startup founders just because they had to take care of larger promoters over there. So we have to liberalize that. Number 2, the choice of instruments available for investors as well as startups to raise funding as of now is extremely rudimentary. There are convertibles, there are hybrid instruments that need to get tax clarity and need to get regulatory clarity as well. I think that's actually number 2. Number 3, for the deep tech world as well, we're still in a situation where giving grants to a deep tech company can actually end up attracting income tax and GST, which is quite patently absurd. We need a tax framework that aligns to how new India is actually being developed. We can't have the regulations of old India hampering new India to end up actually scaling up. Lastly, with regard to VCs as well, I think the government has announced the RDI fund where hopefully that will end up actually getting a lot more capital coming in. And that capital will be a nucleus around which we can create a truly large deep tech ecosystem for the entire country.
All right, very nicely put on various subjects. But Amrit, you have done the full circle. You are heading for an IPO. Now, having that kind of an experience and that kind of an advantage, of course, new technologies are also coming in. So startup culture is at an inflection point. What's required from here on in terms of government support, you think?
I think some of the things that it's partially to do with government, but partially with the ecosystem as well. I think startups don't understand how to engage with government. Like a classic example of this is like a lot of policies have come, like PLI, which are supporting manufacturing. But you'll see hardly any startup participation in those incentives. It's mostly going to the large companies. It took us some time to also figure out how to participate in that, and then now we have won a few PLIs. But that interaction and again, the RDI fund is coming up. Again, it's not clear how do companies participate in these programs which have been created. So I think there is a lot of good policy, but how do we take it to the next level so that this economy also participates and it doesn't go just to the incumbents. I think that is one thing which probably needs more work. Second thing, as Siddharth mentioned, there's a lot of still misunderstanding of how startups get created, which is a classic example of this is when companies go public, we'll all be classified as promoters, which is all good enough. But when you look at traditional promoter-driven companies, the ownership that those promoters have versus startup founders, it's very, very different. And in US, there are mechanisms where companies can increase their ownership linked to shareholder outcomes, you know, and it's a win-win for everyone. But those mechanisms don't exist as much in India. I think just that understanding can be deeper, more empathy to founders. I think those are things which can help us over a period of time.
Right. So as a true incumbent, now you're batting for the rest of the
Yeah.
founder gang, and that's what this particular ecosystem really requires. Let's shift focus to the new buzzword. Of course, artificial intelligence is the buzzword currently, and Sudarshan, we have spoken a lot about AI trust and everything. From your particular space, what is the most critical area that the government and the budget should really look at for artificial intelligence to get a lot more support in the country?
I think we definitely need a lot of compute clusters. Like if you look at the United States, like the number of compute clusters with a single private company is like much more than our entire country's compute. And so startups today who are trying to innovate, run research experiments, this is the biggest cost that they have. So the government obviously through the India AI mission, etc., is setting that up, but I think we need that at a much larger scale. And the other thing is focus on data, because I think one of the advantages we have, and this is a point in time advantage, where India has such like diverse languages and like so many different dialects. If we want to create like something that is truly intelligent but understands our local nuances, I think we really need to focus on data, and it's a very non-trivial task. I mean, companies like Tesla in the US have been spending like billions of dollars just on data, right? So imagine like the kind of scale that needs to be set up, and the last mile nuances, labeling, all of those things. It is something that requires like a much larger effort. It's being passed off as, oh, we'll train the models, we'll do architectural innovation, we'll figure out the data later, but that's not how it works. And I think government needs to sort of help startups annotate and build localized data sets.
All right, so that's the big ask coming in for the artificial intelligence space. But remember, deep tech, much talked about. Harish will tell us more about this. What do you think about the national deep tech startup policy, Harish? What is expected from the government?
Sure. For a startup like us, which is building the entire full stack solution in semiconductor space, starting from building our own materials to making our own chips, right? I think the main thing that's also a part of the national deep tech startup policy has to do, one of the things is procurement. Yes. So how does the government act as a first customer for companies like us, which are primarily starting to work with the strategic sectors, right? This could be defense, aerospace, space. There needs to be a policy drive, and where government is ending up as the end customer here. So there needs to be a push for indigenous component to be taken up in all of these systems, right? While we've had excellent schemes on the module system level, how do you actually, look under the hood and make sure that the semiconductors that we are sourcing are also coming from indigenous players, especially when they're based on indigenous technology? So that's one aspect of it. And the other main one is regarding, talent. So let's say you want to hire at senior, mid-level roles, etc. There's a lot of semiconductor talent and Indian expat talent outside the country. So what is it that we are doing in order to make it attractive for these people to move back here, whether to do their own ventures or join ventures like us? And so those two would be the main things that we'd be looking out for.
Right. So very pertinent points made there on behalf of your space and your industry. But I would also say that the most critical thing, and Siddharth, you'll agree with this, that the budget really looks out for is a taxation policy. For any investor to come in, the certainty as well as the efficiency of taxation is just so critical. So in terms of the taxation policy so far for this particular space, Siddharth, where are we and what can be expected? What is on the wish list from the finance minister?
I think the first and foremost thing we're actually looking for right now is actually stability, for that matter. I think everyone's done dealing with the Trump factor. In fact, Trump has actually gone on to rewrite even basic financial jargon. So if you look at the term EBITDA used to be earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Now it's actually becomes earnings before interest, taxes, and Trump's announcements. It's actually become patently absurd. So what we're looking for right now is stability. That's actually number one. Number two, a commitment from the government to ensure that they're not going to end up actually changing what has actually been offered to the country as of now. Number three, for that matter, what we actually require from them is there are numerous regulatory frictions that prevent Indian institutional capital from actually investing into startups. We had angel tax that has actually thankfully gone gone away as of now.
Yes.
But if you look at your banks, look at your insurance companies, look at your pension funds, the ability for them to end up actually funding innovation like this doesn't
Yes.
exist. If you look at the endowment structure, endowments are one of the largest investors into innovation the world over. Look at the larger universities, all of them have large endowments. India, we don't have university endowments
Yes.
because a regulation written in 1960 fails to allow them to end up actually investing into this. So allow rupee capital to participate far greater way. And similar to the point that Amritachi mentioned,
Right.
we have a culture that is actually, we have a Companies Act that's geared towards punishing promoters, not letting founders flourish. We will never have a Musk in the country. Musk got a $1 trillion pay package if his company's valuation goes up to $8 trillion. In India, we had to do a founder had to do financial engineering, buy shares at a deep discount to the IPO value, just to
Right.
end up actually getting ESOPs. It's patently absurd for actual engineers to do financial engineering to
Right.
benefit from from the fruits of their labor. So
Right.
let us get rid of this ancient regime mindset. Let us actually end up deregulating and getting a lot more. So fix the ESOP problem, allow Indian capital to end up actually flowing in, give us a stable regime that is not going to be changed in the future, because guys like them who take 15 years to build, after 14 years of labor, if the law changes, everything's actually written off. We need stability, we need predictability, we need reform. I think the
Right.
government is aware of this. If they execute on this, this will truly become India's decade.
This is the right time to mention how much the industry labored really, Siddharth, on the angel tax bit and got the victory as well. So I think laboring on some of these issues will also bring about the right mindset from the government's side. But there are strong views on this panel when we talk about ESOPs. Amrit, what do you have to add on that?
I think we've spoken about it. In a bit. I mean, there's a couple of problems with ESOPs. One is for founders, but also for employees. I think the taxation at the employee level is little high. It's, I think, double taxation. Once when you award and once when you actually exercise.
Right.
And what it prevents is actual equity ownership.
Right.
You end up owning a piece of paper which is a ESOP document, but to actually convert that into the actual equity, there is a lot of hoops that you have to cross, which honestly can be simplified. I don't think there's anyone losing at the government side. It is a win-win in the classic definition, where there is a long-termism that is encouraged, and the government doesn't really lose much. Same thing when you extend to founders, right? I mean, we don't need 1 trillion, but you can just have better skin in the game for long-term orientation, right? Like, of course, it's not like most founders. I mean, I would go on a limb, but most founders don't do it for money.
Yes.
They're doing it to build a business, etc.
But you need to earn money.
It's not about money. It's just having enough ownership in a company that you have built,
Yes.
which for historical reasons you've had to dilute to kind of get to the certain stage. Right?
And I would like to just throw in one more critical point. When you are built, you are critical to that business.
Yeah.
You also avert a hostile takeover if you have enough ownership in that particular business.
It's not
so
just
that.
that.
Also plays a very big role.
Yeah.
And in fact, in the listed space, most of the companies actually are very, very critical about this particular aspect, at least from the old promoter class.
It's also an addition where most likely founders will never sell their shares. So it's a very stabilizing influence on the overall stock price of the company over a long period of time, right?
Yes.
So you need long-term shareholders, in addition to people who will trade the stock in and out over the fullness of time, right? And I think that needs to be more encouraged, for lack of a better word.
I think, Nisha, just one more point just to end up adding to this, which is also mission critical. Most of the financial investors only look at your quarter by quarter results. The founder is the only person who has a long-term vision about the company. Therefore, the moment the founder is actually in a minority, most of the shareholder decisions are going to be geared towards outcomes that end up creating financial gains in the short term, but end up being ruinous in the long term. If you look at the case of GE, for example, one of the original Dow Jones companies that were there. The moment they started getting finance folk to end up taking over, they financialized and they've actually lost. Boeing has also happened the same thing. We need actual engineers to be incentivized, not just financial engineering alone. And having them enjoy the fruits of their labor is actually mission critical to this. Capital is important, but ownership and control and direction plays a very, very important role in growth of any entity.
And to grow the company, if you have diluted to get the funding into the business at a later stage, you should be able to recoup once the company has stabilized. But Harish has a separate point when it comes to ESOP. What about the talent acquisition, and where is this ESOP issue really stunting our ability to attract talent in deep tech?
In addition to everything that's been said, I would say that ESOPs are also a very excellent talent acquisition strategy. And if you look at the semiconductor manufacturing space, right, we have a lot of Indian experts who are outside. They're experts, right? And they've all, let's say, over a period of 10 years, if you're in a mid or senior level role, you've accumulated a bunch of ESOPs and RSUs, a significant amount. And, so to incentivize such people to move back, of course, the first question is, okay, now if I'm moving back to India to be a part of your company or do my own company, what's going to happen to this amount of RSUs that I'm sitting on, right? And again, it gets taxed both at, like Amrut said, both at exercise as well as when you liquidate, right? So, I mean, maybe there could be structures which incentivize highly skilled people in some of these sectors to actually move back. Give them a tax holiday for 3-5 years. Let's see if they like it here. Like to build here or like to participate in somebody else's building of a company here.
All right. So very strong views coming in on the ESOP front, at least from the founders. It calls for a coffee break. Let's go and have coffee. All right, so we've discussed one phase of what is expected from the startup space when it comes to the union budget. There's much more to discuss. So Amrit, when we talk about the new age technology giving thrust to our brick and mortar, our real strength of manufacturing, where are we and what more needs to be done by the budget?
I think we've made a lot of progress in the last few years. I think let's start by acknowledging that. If you look at India's biggest import bills, energy, electronics, these are some of the larger ones. And we have great policy interventions today to address how do we localize each and every line item, whether through new technology like solar and storage, or through making existing technology more efficient, which is like in the, what we're doing in electronics and localizing the manufacturing. Right? What we have been able to achieve is the first version, which is how do we assemble in India.
Right.
We still get components from outside and we assemble in India, and I think we've done a great job in kind of bootstrapping that ecosystem. The next evolution of that is how do we make the components in India, and the third evolution of that is how do we design in India.
Right.
I think that will complete the full stack. It's very interesting to see that we are proceeding with the component and the design challenge at the same time.
Right.
So there's a bunch of PLIs which have come up to address the component ecosystem, and now we have the RDI fund, which basically addresses the whole R&D gap that India has as a country. So hopefully, if you extrapolate that 3 to 5 years from now, there should be more designing in India. There should be more components in India.
Right.
Stability is an extremely important point, which Siddharth has been mentioning. I think we need stability on all of these points. Some of these things may take longer than we had initially imagined.
Right.
Like mobile phones is a classic example. It's been a positive case study. But the incentives go away next year,
Yes.
right? So what happens after that?
Yes.
Do we continue with the, taking it another 5 years, another 10 years,
Yes.
or do we sunset it?
Yes.
I mean, either way, clarity is good, so that the industry can prepare for it. So those would be my kind of like broad expectations. That I think we are doing a great job. We should just communicate more, and we should have a longer time horizon than maybe what we had initially imagined.
Right, longer time horizon for backing some of these spaces because it is still evolving. But Sudarshan, when we talk about artificial intelligence, voice AI is picking up pace globally. How are we positioned, and what can government really do to really make this sector buoyant in India? And where are we right now?
That's a great question, and I think it's one of the most important problems that we need to solve right now as a country. If you look at our exports, like a lot of it is BPO, IT services, etc., and we have a lot of contact centers, etc., in India. And with voice AI, what's happening is a lot of this is slowly getting automated, where you have voice agents that can do customer support, that can start doing sales, that can start doing various things, right? Now, imagine if this IP that is getting built of voice agents, voice AI is getting owned by a foreign country, right? Like you suddenly are not able to export these things. And so we have this unique advantage as well, because if you have to build like voice AI in India, we have that data set creation advantage because we have a very diverse population which speaks a lot of languages and so on. So we can actually create a large amount of high quality voice AI data and use this to train models and take over this IP which can get generated and stay in the country, so that we are still able to export some of these services. And I think this is a very critical time to do that. Otherwise, this industry will start moving from us to a foreign country.
Right. So India needs the AI capabilities in different spaces have been the talk of the town. That are we capable enough? Do we have those capabilities, or are we again going to import those capabilities from the US, while we had the same finishing line advantage this time with the technological shift? And that is one critical aspect that we are really focusing on. But Harish, when we talk about semiconductor, there is a global race for this particular capability as well. With your in-house capability and innovation, and which was incubated by IISc, and you are a scientist and innovator yourself, where are we in our capabilities, and how's your company really helping in putting India on the map on that particular front?
Yeah, so if you just take two steps back in the semicon space, right? So we've historically been a services-driven economy. I mean, historically, a few years ago. So what has changed is that now you see companies coming up which are also owning the IP in the semiconductor space and owning products in the semiconductor space. So that's the fundamental shift that's happened as far as the semicon market is concerned. And you're right that there is also a certain amount of geopolitical angle to all of this, right? So because semiconductors have become the new gold, or people have realized they're gold at least, over the last few years. So that's the significant shift. So what it means is that it's very important for every country to have some amount of indigenous capability in the semiconductor domain taken as a whole. So for example, we at Agnet, we work on gallium nitride semiconductors. So we are a gallium nitride semiconductor product company, and we are, I believe, India's first gallium nitride semiconductor product company. Those are all important words. So because technologies like gallium nitride are also relatively newer.
Yeah.
So you have a chance to not only catch up with the state-of-the-art technology with the rest of the world, but also maybe go ahead. Right? Now, provided the right amount of investments, the people, and the ecosystem exists in order to support such efforts. So that, I would say, is the most important shift, right? And now that you have, and technologies like gallium nitride are useful across a bunch of sectors. So there's a strategic sector, which is defense, aerospace, space. This is important in the telecom sector. It's important for power conversion. Today, we all carry fast chargers, which are all powered by GaN, right? So that's really where the use case is. So this sort of, this is very early days for such kind of technologies to play out. So with the right support, we can actually set some standards and benchmarks worldwide for this.
That's right. And, self-reliance is one of the main pole planks of the government as well. So, Siddharth, AI, deep tech, many of these capabilities where we cannot be importing and buying it from outside. On this particular front, you've had several discussions with the government agencies. Where are we? Is a lot of work getting done? And practical solutions are being found?
I think the one thing about this government, and kudos to them, is the fact that they are very receptive to feedback. Number two, they do a large amount of work in the background that doesn't end up getting publicized over there. And number three, they're not afraid to end up actually throwing out their older rule book. If you look at the PLI scheme and everything that's come out as of now, this is an entirely new revolutionary way of thinking. Even the RDI fund, which is about 1 lakh crores, it's a very large sum of money that the government themselves are actually putting in with the expectation that the private sector ends up actually putting in a lot more. But I think where we end up actually failing, and this is one of our fundamental failures, is in the nitty-gritties, in the details, we end up getting hamstringed and hampered by this old economy way of thinking. I think that is where we need to end up actually seeing the government play a far more revolutionary role. If you look at even the larger policy announcements, normally within the fine print, there are one or two issues, some wording, some comma or a full stop that a grammatician can end up actually finding out that completely alters the way that the courts end up actually interpreting this. We've seen this happen when it comes to telecom and the 2G spectrum. We've seen this happen in numerous occasions with retrospective taxation, etc. I think what the most important part that the government should actually give, and a source of comfort, is when they put out this policy, they're not going to change the policy. They will grandfather a larger number of people in, and they ensure that when it comes to any litigation, they will not take an adverse position and they make all their cards actually known to the industry. For us to actually benefit from deep technology, Indian intellect powers deep technology across the world. A third of all the founders in the US are actually of Indian or Indian origin. Most of the engineers working in these larger LLMs and these AI companies are actually of Indian origin. If they want to come back, they need to have a comparable lifestyle, a comparable taxation policy, comparable flexibility and freedom compared to what they've actually gotten. And for India to truly end up actually escaping the middle economy trap, we need to end up actually thinking bold and thinking anew. So we need to have India's own Doge. We have a deregulation commission. Hopefully their paper comes up. They end up actually changing that. So I think if the government ends up actually truly committing to this and getting rid of the old way of thinking and truly embracing market forces, India will be a very different economy. The only way we can end up actually leapfrogging it is to end up actually embracing the new.
All right. So that's such a great thought to really end this very, very interesting conversation. And all of you have really given such emphatic points on how this particular industry can really develop. So thank you, Harish, Sudarshan, Siddharth, Amrit, for joining us right here on Budget for Bharat on NDTV Profit. With that, it's a wrap on this very lively discussion on what the startup world really needs from the finance minister.